While COVID-19 affected almost every facet of our lives, there is little doubt that one of the lasting legacies will be in changing how we work. I mean, prior to the pandemic, an average of just 5% of work days were spent working from home. For all the talk of flexible work practices, very few organisations and individuals had truly embraced the realities of and the possibilities of remote work. And yet that changed overnight. Many of my clients sent home their entire workforce, hundreds or in some cases thousands of employees in the space of 36 hours back in mid-March of 2020. Now, many of them said that this is something they would never have believed was possible prior to doing it because of the pandemic. But amazingly, it worked. People were productive, people were focused, people were effective. It was quite the remarkable global experiment. Now, for some of us, the remote work experience has been a blissful one of working in our pajamas, not having to commute or engage too much with colleagues face to face. All the introverts sort of loved remote work. And for others, it's been a bit more chaotic with family pressures to contend with. But regardless of your experience, the shift to remote and hybrid work has been an adjustment for us all. It's seen the very rhythms of our workdays change significantly. In fact, data from a global productivity study conducted by Reclaim AI shows that between February 2020 and October 2021, the typical workday has gotten 18% longer. The number of meetings that we have in an average working day have increased by 69%. But encouragingly, the length of meetings has actually decreased by about 11%. Now, as the pandemic passes, the biggest question now is what the new normal for work will look like and what this will mean for organisations and leaders. For those who will maintain hybrid or remote working practices, there are a number of considerations that need to be front of mind as we look to the future. And I just want to look at really quickly 5 considerations that we need to have on the radar. Number 1 is the whole issue of culture. Among the most pressing issues for many leaders is how to maintain corporate culture and a sense of belonging in remote teams, especially as new employees join a team over time. And it's all well and good to codify and espouse the behaviours and the values that define an organisation. But the truth is that culture is caught, not taught. New employees get the clearest sense of how things get done and what makes an organisation unique by observing the behaviour and the decisions of others. This happens by osmosis. Now, the second consideration is that of productivity. Now, although various studies in the early stages of the pandemic pointed to productivity gains, whether these persist in the long term, honestly, it remains to be seen. Now, research in late December 2020 found that 25% of businesses actually experienced a significant drop in productivity when staff were working remotely. Now, it's worth noting that in the very same study, 25% of businesses experienced a rise in productivity, and the remaining half found that remote work made no real meaningful difference to staff output and efficiency. However, this is a really key theme. If a quarter of businesses found that remote work was detrimental to how effective and productive their workforce were, this is a figure that we simply cannot afford to ignore. Interestingly, research in early 2021 gives some indication of how complex the issue of productivity in remote work can be. When polled, 42% of employees who wanted to return to the office said that productivity issues were one of the key reasons they wanted to be back in a traditional workplace rather than working from home. The third consideration relates to the issue of innovation and collaboration. It's interesting, we've had a lot of discussion about this throughout the pandemic. Now, one of the key voices in this space, Apple's CEO Tim Cook, has been one proponent of the value of proximity when it comes to healthy and innovative teams. And he says this, he says, innovation isn't always a planned activity. It's often just bumping into each other over the course of the day and advancing an idea that you've just had. It's difficult to do that when you're working remotely. And data is increasingly validating opinions like that of Tim Cook. Probably the most thorough research examining the impact of remote work on collaboration throughout the pandemic was released by Microsoft in September 2021. What the Microsoft team did is they actually monitored the communication patterns of over 61,000 employees worldwide. What they did is they wanted to look at the impact of remote work on the way their teams communicated. What they found is that remote work had been detrimental to communication in ways that would threaten innovation in the long term. Now, while hybrid and remote work don't need to automatically come at the cost of collaboration and connection, there is little doubt that these things are harder to achieve in a geographically dispersed team. Our fourth consideration with remote and hybrid work is that of leadership. Now, providing clarity around expectations with hybrid work is emerging as a key issue for every organisation right now. According to a 2022 Work Trend Index, 38% of hybrid employees say their biggest challenge right now is knowing when and why to come into the office. The same report revealed that only a quarter of companies have established team agreements that make it really clear what the new workplace norms are. Now, a potential mismatch in these expectations between leaders and team members is proving to be a key factor in what's often termed as the Great Resignation. As data from a McKinsey Reimagine Work report revealed, roughly 30% of employees globally say they're likely to leave their current roles if they're required to return to the office full-time. Now, added to this is the very real leadership challenge of remaining fair and inclusive when different team members are working in different ways and in different locations. There's honestly a growing concern right now among corporate leaders that workers who stay remote could wind up as, second-class corporate citizens, and they may well fall behind in promotions and pay. Validating these concerns, the Society for Human Resource Management conducted a survey in 2021 that revealed that 42% of supervisors admit that they sometimes forget about remote workers when they're assigning tasks. This is a blind spot we've got to be aware of. Now, in the words of Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, solving the hybrid work paradox is going to be the leadership challenge of the next decade. This is not going to go away anytime soon. Okay, the fifth and final consideration or implication with remote or hybrid work relates to generational equity. Now, very few of us would have imagined that a generation of digital natives would have struggled with adapting to remote work, but that is precisely what the data shows us, and this certainly came as a surprise to me. Even though tech-savvy millennials and Gen Zs or Gen Zs may have no trouble with the functional aspects of working from home, the practical and psychological implications for younger generations were a different story entirely. In research conducted by Smartsheet, a surprising majority of Gen Z or Gen Z and millennial employees reported they were actually really struggling with remote work. As you can see from the data on the screen behind me, far more Gen Zs and millennials reported feeling out of the loop or disconnected when compared with their Gen X or their baby boomer colleagues. Now, if you're leading a multi-generational team, which most of us are, this is something we've got to keep front of mind. Now, despite the inherent challenges and complications of working from home, what's clear is that this will be a permanent feature of our post-pandemic work lives. While many organisations and employees welcome this as a positive change, it's important to consider the implications, both good and bad, of the biggest reworking of work in over a century.